a movie franchise that is starting to become somewhat of a staple in the movie industry, and I think this could become a very big franchise, is Kingsman, guys. This is a franchise that has now, seen two movies up to this point, and we have a third one that's going to be coming out in the form of The Kingsmen, and I am extremely excited about this movie. Now, there are some things I'm excited about with it. There's other things that I'm kind of skeptical that it's going to be as good as the other ones, but let's get into everything that we know so far about the movie. So in an article, guys, that was written by Samuel Perrone of Screen Rant, later this year, the third installment of the Kingsman franchise will be released. Titled The Kingsmen, Matthew Vaughn once again writes and directs the story of this British intelligence agency. His two previous movies, Kingsman: The Secret Service and Kingsman: The Golden Circle, combined made nearly $900 million in the United States, so much is expected from the third of this series. Guys, like I said, this is starting to become a staple in the movie industry. I mean, when we're talking a series that has two movies up to this point and has made almost $1 billion combined, that's pretty big. Few action movie experiences have come close to the thrill that was delivered during the first movie. The second movie was, in a word, fine, but not as exciting as the first one. Hopefully, The Kingsmen can capture the same spark as the first movie. Now, here's some things that we know, guys, about this upcoming movie. Number one is that it's a prequel. It is apparent from the trailer that this movie will not follow up to the previous two. The first movie introduced audiences to the secret organization. The second one shows them saving the day abroad. The third movie appears to be a combination of both. All signs point to an origin story that pits them against evil forces. Now, what I'll say about that is I think that could be a real hit or miss, because you're going to have different actors and actresses to an extent because it's a prequel. I think that kind of, when you're going away a little bit from what has kind of made the franchise up to this point with the characters and such, it kind of leaves me a little bit concerned. Similar to what, I'll give you guys an example, what it kind of reminds me of a little bit is like the Jason Bourne, series. So you had the Bourne Legacy that came out with, obviously not with Matt Damon. And Matt Damon, of course, was kind of the one who helmed all these movies. Then you have like other, when you have like the Bourne Legacy that comes out, not that Jeremy Renner wasn't great, it just didn't feel really like a Bourne movie. It felt more kind of forced than anything, and that's what I'm hoping this doesn't feel like. An American counterpart is another thing that we want to see. One of the cool parts about Kingsman: The Golden Circle was the introduction of an American spy organization called the Statesmen. Together, the two organizations saved the day. It would be a nice addition to this movie if they did the same thing. A World War I era American spy organization would add more context for the time period the movie is set in. I can agree with that. Now, this takes place around World War I. The opening shots in the trailer are of trench warfare, so it is safe to say this movie will be set in World War I era Europe. A war-torn setting always provides a versatile backdrop for action and storytelling. It would be interesting to see if Vaughn casts his own version of history or just uses the time period as part of the setting. So yeah, that'll be. I think it should be. I think it should be pretty great as far as the setting is concerned. Now, when Aaron Taylor Johnson made his breakout performance in Kick-Ass, he was primed to take the 2010s by storm. He did just the opposite. Other than Savages and Godzilla, he didn't star in a whole lot. He had a cup of coffee with Marvel playing Quicksilver, but his character died as soon as he was introduced. Pretty disappointing from what seemed to be one of the up-and-coming leading men. Hopefully he can turn it around by going back to where it all began. ATJ will once again be set in a comedy action movie directed by Matthew Vaughn, which I think will be great. Now, this is where I get a little bit concerned, guys. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, according to IMDb, neither Colin Firth nor Taron Egerton will appear in this film. As it is an origin story, it makes sense that the stars of the first two movies are absent from the third. Taron is coming off Rocketman, in which he played Elton John. Firth, a small part in 1917. Now, I don't understand why Firth wouldn't be in this one. Understand Edgerton, but I think Firth would be, it would be nice to see him in this movie. But that's where I get a little bit concerned, because Edgerton and Firth are such good actors that it kind of makes me a little bit concerned about where this movie and how well this movie is gonna feel, because we've gotten used to Firth and Edgerton And so I would love to see them, come back in this one, but it obviously doesn't look like that's something that's going to be happening. Now, previously, the two had been paired as the mentor and mentee duo within the Kingsman organization. In the first one, Firth discovered a young and rough around the edges Edgerton and groomed him into a gentleman spy extraordinaire. Now, Stanley Tucci playing a big part. Looking down the cast list for this movie, one name sticks out. It's none other than Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci is so underrated. He is also always working, and he is good in just about everything he is in, whether he plays a restaurant owner like in Big Night, a supportive husband in Julie and Julia, or a cynical but empathetic attorney in Spotlight. He steals every scene he is in. I agree with that. Matthew Vaughn, who's directing. Once again, Matthew Vaughn will direct a Kingsman movie. These films are his babies. They are based on the comic book series The Secret Service by Mark Miller and David Gibbons. Vaughn adapted the first two movies and is on to his third. He got his start with Layer Cake in 2004, the movie that launched Daniel Craig into the James Bond role. From there, Vaughn directed Kick-Ass and an X-Men movie. So, look, I'm excited for Vaughn. I think that this will be his third movie. I think that this should maybe be his last one that he does. Not that he's not a good director, but after a while, when someone is solely focused on pretty much one series, a lot of times though that series can get really stale when you only have one set of eyes really directing it and helming it. So I think it's important that this should be Vaughn's last, Kingsman movie, and then he should pass the torch to someone else, and he should be like an executive producer moving forward. We would love to set up the next movie. Fingers crossed that this is not the final Kingsman movie. As long as Matthew Vaughn is at the helm and he continues to attract dynamic casts, he should keep making these movies. The 25th Bond movie is about to come out, and there have been 5 Jason Bourne movies. That should at least guarantee us 2 more Secret Service movies following this one. So I think that absolutely this is a franchise I think that's going to continue for a while. It's so good, and it does remind you a little bit of Jason Bourne, reminds you a little bit of James Bond. I think that it would be great to see this as a staple, like a staple franchise that continues. I don't believe that Matthew Vaughn should direct these movies after, of course, after the Kingsman. I think that he's kind of setting up the franchise for like a direction, right? He did the first 2 films, then he's going back in time, kind of setting up the time periods and setting up the origins of the Kingsman, and then I think it's time for him to pass the torch, like I said, to someone else. Ralph Fiennes will star. The first 2 movies saw the likes of Colin Firth, Michael Caine, and Mark Strong heading up the Kingsman organization. This time around, Ralph Fiennes will fill that role. Fiennes will play the Duke of Oxford, who looks to be one of the founding fathers of the Kingsman organization. Think of his role as M in James Bond, but with the daring of Bond himself. So I'm excited about Fiennes being the next guy. Like I said, it still concerns me about not having, Colin Firth, Taron Egerton, but at the same time, we got to give it a chance because it could be absolutely amazing. We won't know until the movie comes out. What we've seen so far, though, I'm pretty excited about it. Kingsman: The Secret Service included one of the modern iconic action sequences in movie history. Colin Firth, overcame by adrenaline and rage, takes on the entirety of a hate group, all of whom are also juiced on adrenaline. What ensues is all time. Throughout the scene, Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd plays in the background and perfectly complements the violent mayhem. None of the action sequences in the second movie were anywhere near as exciting as that one scene from the first one. A memorable scene can make or break a movie. If it is good, it can take a movie up a level, and if the opposite, the inverse. Hopefully Vaughn gives us another action sequence for the ages, and I agree, but I also think the reason why that scene is so all-time is because just kind of what happened in it with Colin Firth, after, fighting it out. I'm not going to do any spoilers right now. If you haven't seen the movie, guys, you definitely should see these movies. I mean, they're incredible. But I think what really made that scene so good was what happened at the end of that scene. So at the end of the day, it's hard to kind of do those kind of like wow moments and shocking moments in movies at times, especially because when it has to deal with the main character. So nonetheless, guys, I'm very excited about The Kingsman. I think this is going to be a great origin story for the franchise. Part of me feels like they should have made 3 Kingsman movies before they did kind of like one movie, like a trilogy that kind of is going in a specific direction. And then they should have done a prequel a little bit later, but doing one now, I mean, I'm not going to complain, especially if it's really good. But let's just say it doesn't hit on every level that we're hoping. And Matthew Vaughn ends up kind of steering kind of taking this in a direction that we're not really excited about. I just hope that doesn't ruin the franchise as a whole. I'm excited about it, guys. This is going to be probably a funny, somewhat comedic action adventure, exciting film, and that's what we're all hoping for. And I'm excited to learn more about the Kingsman. I'm excited to learn more about all of these, the gentleman and all of that. I'm excited to hear the history of it. It's something that's really interesting, and I can't wait to see this be potentially the next Jason Bourne, the next James Bond type of series. But let me know in the comment section below, guys. What are you the most excited about with The Kingsman? This is basically everything that we know so far about the movie. What are the things that you wish were going to be coming in it? What are the things that you're hoping to get out of this movie? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more The Kingsman content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.